On this episode of One-on-One, we're going to talk with somebody very important to the area. He ascended pretty quick, and he gives his wife a lot of credit. Who is the guest? You'll have to wait and see. It's all next on One-on-One. One-on-One is brought to you by the law office of Waits and Downer. You said you met Miss Connie when you were 15 and she was 13?
Yeah, I was playing Babe Ruth baseball at Stark Field.
All right.
And I lived 2 blocks away. All the girls used to sit in the first base bleachers kind of at the top, and I was walking home and they were calling me, David, you like Connie Perkle? And I turned around and said, I don't know Connie Perkle. I probably did, but not to say I really knew her.
Yeah.
So I made it my business the next game to see who was Connie Perkle. And she had some little black shorts on, and I said, I'm going to get to know this girl. Yeah. And
breaking news right here.
Right here.
One-on-One.
Right here. And I think after that, we danced at the Woodman. They had a dance, and that was it. 6 years later, we were married.
She hit you right away.
Hit me right away, yeah. And I guess I did hit her, so the girls knew that she liked me, so.
Well, somebody was planting the seed, so she must have been looking at you before you knew who she was. And I know she's in the studio here.
Yeah.
So
she probably
I'm
was.
not even gonna look at her to see if that's true or not.
She's shaking her head, yes, that's true. So she noticed me before I noticed her. Generally, the younger girls, I was a year older than her in school, so the younger girls got attracted to the older boys to a certain extent.
And that's never changed.
No.
It seems to be the norm.
Right. Well, Michelle told you she was 17 and Mark was 22
Yeah.
when they first met and started dating.
Right. What about your athletic days? When did you know you were a pretty good athlete? Because I heard the stories and you were always in a leadership role. Where did you get that from?
Well, my dad was a good athlete. He bought Ronald and I a catcher's mitt. And it was funny you say about Lily. So we were really ahead. I was really ahead of the guys my age because I had an older brother, a year and a half. Yeah. And we played ball every day. And Teeny Grow and Russell Claymore, Mule and Teeny, talking about nicknames. Yeah. We played baseball in the yard, football every day we could. And I was 9 years old pitching against 12-year-olds in Little League. And one funny story I remember, like yesterday, my Uncle Lloyd Claymore was coaching my twin brothers, Jeff and Gary. In fact, their nephew is Barry Weiss, who's a lawyer in Thibodeau. His mother and I were first cousins. Well, anyway, my Uncle Lloyd came get me after one game I pitched. And I pitched 6 innings, and the score was 3-1. I don't think I won a game, but they were always close. So he comes around to get me, and I think he's going to buy me a soft drink. But there was a little substation behind the third base bleachers, and he brought me behind there, and they had a guy from the radio with the antenna on his head, and the coaches in there, and they wanted to interview me. And it's funny I'm doing this today, but this is how I started an interview. I had my hands on my knees, and we have David Richard here, and he's 9 years old, and the coaches are thinking of putting him on the All-Star team. And I looked up, and the coach was going, talk. I couldn't talk. He said, I think the most runs you allowed in one game is 4. And I went, yeah. And he looked at me and he said, talk. And the other, talk. And then they asked me again, you throw just as hard as some of the 12-year-olds. Well, yeah. And he looked at the coach and said, well, I guess David's not going to talk to us today.
And you weren't a good guest for radio, right?
Oh, look, I was scared to death. And my Uncle Lloyd said, you can go. When he did, I ran out of that station like I was a rabbit. I mean, I was scared to death. And here I am today with you interviewing on TV.
But you're so at ease. You MC. And I guess attrition or experience brings you to that point because being a judge, being a lawyer, you got to always be in front of the public. Were you shy as a kid?
I wasn't shy. I just, You know, I remember when I had speech class my junior year in high school, and I dreaded having that. And by the time the class was over, Mr. Bovon wanted me to major in speech. I said, no, I don't want to do that. So that's when I really realized, you know, I can do this.
You know that commercial, we all become our parents?
Right.
It's really true.
Right.
Either one or the other.
Right.
We become. Somebody in your family had to be at least publicly oriented. Who was it?
My mom could have been president of the United States. I mean, she was that type of person. Wherever she worked, if she left, the person would call me and say, I don't know what I'm going to do without your mama. You know, she worked at a private plumbing shop and then left there, and it closed shortly after she left because she took a job in the bookstore at Nichols. From there, she went to the Department of Public Safety and Corrections. And I think your Uncle Benny was working in those departments.
He was, yeah.
At that time too. And she pretty much ran the place. And when she retired, Jerry Jones, who was running the place, called me and said, I don't know what I'm going to do without your mama. I mean, you know, I'm scared. But, you know, they found somebody else, and she had trained somebody. So she was that type of person. Right. You gave her something to do. She was going to, wasn't and ifs or buts about it. She was going to do it.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
I didn't realize you knew what came in. You were talking about my Uncle Hector, who's my pa ran.
Had his papers.
Uncle Benny, you're talking about Uncle Norbert Richard.
Right.
There's 6 degrees of separation everywhere you go.
Right. In fact, your Uncle Hector was an administrator at Thibodeau Boiler Works, where my dad worked, and that's how we knew Mr. Hector. And he knew me, and his daughter worked for Harvey Jr., Robbie.
Yeah.
So we knew all the people, especially people from St. John, because that's where my mama was raised.
Wow.
Her daddy was the overseer at Greenwood Plantation, and she grew up on a plantation.
Well, Greenwood is where my grandpa was a mechanic.
Is that right?
My mama's daddy.
Well,
Del Van, they called him Doc.
Doc, well, he worked under my grandpa, Ben Claymore.
See, that's what I'm saying. And I know on Waverly, on Cherry, right across the street with the Claymores, Blake McDonald and them.
Blake McDonald.
Right next door.
Richard Claymore.
Right.
All the Legends lived across the street from y'all.
And my cousin Thad married Eloise.
That's right. Right. And his mama was a Foss, and his daddy, in fact, his daddy and his brother built my house in the country club.
Yeah.
We used to call him Boy Toops and Norman Toops.
That's right. Yep. They were great carpenters.
Small world.
Yeah, great.
Hey, we look deep enough,
Well,
we're going to be related.
Boy's wife, Yolande, was my godmother.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, she was a sweetheart.
Yeah. She was strict, too.
She was.
Matter of fact, my godmother and godfather were my dad's godmother and godfather because they were so much older than my dad.
Is that right? Well, that's right.
So we shared.
That's right.
Let me ask, so when you're humming along as an attorney, you're probably doing pretty well at that point. You're probably repaying Miss Connie for all that money she threw at you to get you there. When did it hit you, hey, I want to be a judge?
Well, it was real easy. I came back from law school. Well, even before that, my mom and dad were friends with Judge Archie Sain, who was the city judge. And he came hunting with us a couple of times, and they knew him through the American Legion. All the old war guys were at the American Legion. In fact, I worked with him the summer after my freshman year of law school. When Connie came back to get her 15 hours, I worked with him that summer. And when I got out of law school, I had a job. And I'm going to tell you a story about city judge. Archie won in 1972, and in 1974, January of 1972, he died. That night around 11 o'clock, I think the phone woke me up. It was Billy Tozer. He was at Governor Edwards at the governor's mansion and said, "You want to be city judge?" I said, "It'd be great to be city judge." He said, "You're the new city judge. Edwards going to nominate you as city judge." About 10 minutes after that call, he calls back. And I was thinking the same thing. As soon as he picks up the phone, before I could say hello, I said, I don't have the 5 years. I had 4 years, 8 months. I had to have 5 years of practice to be city judge. He said, well, stay by the phone. We're going to figure something out. Calls back about a half an hour. He says, you want to be city attorney? I said, city attorney? I said, Walter Lanier's city attorney. He said, we're going to make him city judge, and we're going to make you city attorney. Because they all knew I was working for Archie Saint and was the heir to the throne to a certain extent. And that's what happened. But Remy Chesson ran for the Court of Appeal and won in '76, and then Walt ran for district judge and won. By that time, I had 6 years, so I could run for city judge, which I did. And it was good to be related to all the people we talked about. I won by 82, 83% of the vote, and never had opposition after that.
Landslide Richard, huh?
I'm telling you. There's a funny story. We used to call landslide Ware. Judge Ware won by 1 vote in Coushatta, I think. So we all called him when you go to summer school in Destin, Florida. Landslide Ware.
I always say good things happen to good people.
I say that too, and
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah, you were surrounded by, I'm going to say religious too. How many nuns were around you, or how many brothers were around you?
Yeah, my only 2 role models I ever had were my mom and dad, but probably some of the biggest influences in my life when I got to Thibodeau College with the Brothers of the Sacred Heart. Mm-hmm. They were good, holy men, and when they took a vow of poverty, they meant it, because they had one car. Dub Gibbons gave the brothers a gray Buick, and that's when they went to Mass, they all piled in, about 6 of them, in that gray Buick. They didn't have their own cars.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
You were always at the forefront of leadership role, quarterbacking, doing different things, being the city judge, being the city attorney, or wherever you ended up. You always were seen by others to be a leader. Did that come naturally to you?
Probably so. You know, when I got to Thibodeau College in the 9th grade, they made me president and closed the nomination. So I was president of the class from 9th grade to 12th grade. Of course, back then, if you were in sports and you were a pretty good athlete and you made good grades, you were a shoo-in for president, probably. Mm-hmm. And was captain of the baseball, captain of the football team. We had different captains, but I was captain football team. Got to Nichols, I was captain of the baseball team my senior year. So I guess, I don't know, I guess I could speak halfway decent and had a good head on my shoulders and made good grades and played sports. So I guess it fit in pretty good with that.
You said you dreaded taking that speech class.
I did.
But today you speak so naturally and you MC events and it comes so fluidly. When did you turn to your wife one time and said, I think we made it?
Yeah, I was nervous when I became a lawyer too. But you know, once I became city judge, I felt so comfortable in dealing with the people, my staff and all that. You know, I was good to go there, good to go.
And I always say this, and I'm sure all attorneys in different cities are unique, but Thibodeau had a lot of very smart attorneys, very confident attorneys. And I'm sure you sitting there sometimes and you got to make decisions.
Right, right. Well, you know, it's like any profession. You get used to making decisions, you know, and that's a spiritual angle that comes into. I just always challenge my conscience to do the right thing, apply the facts to the law, and that's the decision. You know, half the people left the courtroom not crazy about me, and the other half thought I was a great guy, you know, but that's,
right.
That's, you know, and I remember some cases I had where there were people sitting there in their uniforms expecting me to decide a certain way, and I didn't decide their way, and I'm sure they weren't happy about it. But that's, you know, when you're on the right path, everything comes easy.
What are you most proud of? I know that's hard to narrow down in the spectrum that you've been in, but as you look back.
I think I'm most proud of my family, you know. Michelle touched on that. I came from great parents. Probably the greatest gift my parents gave me was the ability to accept my station in life, whatever that might have been. My dad was a welder. If I'd have been a welder at McDermott, they taught me how to live, you know. You don't buy what you need, you buy what you can afford, and be happy about that. And that's, you know, and they ended up, Dad had 2 heart attacks, lost his eye, Mom got Parkinson's. They never could enjoy the camp on Lake Lorette, but they never complained. They just accepted their lot in life, and hopefully I pass some of that on to my family. I know Michelle put a lot of syrup on Connie and I, but if I could get all of their friends and classmates and get their daughters to come be on your program, they would say the same thing about their parents as Michelle said about Connie and I. We have some great family units in Terrebonne and Lafourche Parish and Houma, Thibodeau, that we can build on. We were just simple people and made the best of our lives, as your mom and dad did too. You know?
Absolutely, a lot of sacrifice.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And we were all surrounded by a definite core. But if I got your friends, and I got Miss Connie's friends, and I'm sure they became mutual friends over all these years, and I got the brothers, and I got Coach Zush.
Right.
And I got Cam Movon. Let's go. We could go down the line.
Cam.
I got your son-in-law, who's
Cam prosecuted my court, one of my best prosecutors.
yeah,
Real talented prosecutor.
was my high school football coach
I know it.
at Vanderbilt. It was a heck of a coach. I got that gang in a room, and then they chose a word to describe you. But then I went to Miss Connie, and I said, "Give me one word to describe your husband." What would you hope the consensus word would be to describe you?
Faith. Faith. You know, without it, you're a ship without a rudder. So I've always had it instilled in my faith life. I mean, if you don't have a faith life, where are you going? You know, where are you going in life? What happens to you when you die? Mm-hmm. Simple enough.
Well
it's not
said.
a bad deal, is it?
Well said.
Not a bad deal.
I want to thank you for not only your public service, but your example to the area. And I waited too long to get you on. Should have had you on a lot earlier. And
Well, you were making, people told me you had made some things. I was just ducking you.
Well, there's a list of people that duck it, but then finally I get them.
Finally you get it.
But you've been a great example, and your wife as well. And thank you for what you've done.
Well, you want to bring Connie up here? No.
She's waving you off.
Yeah,
Huh?
waving me off.
But thank you so
thank
much.
you. Thank you. This has been, went by fast.
It does. It flies by.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm. This one-on-one program has been brought to you by the law offices of Waits and Downer.